feel like an intro, but this season 2 could have been done in one, but felt I needed to. The perfection of our conception projected through reflection that's connected is a blessing, and I needed to. Plus I need a few moments just to speak to you about these individuals whose mission to deceiving you, saying the achievable is just so unachievable, but that's only conceivable if you say and believe it's true. Protect the presence of essence with the aggression of a guard dog. Did you forget you was a god, y'all? Maybe you need someone believing you. Well, damn it, I believe in you. Not cause I'm expecting perception, I can see me in you. There's power in the questions and lessons is what I teach to you. Injecting my perspective suggested, no, I don't preach to you. Rejecting that you less than forever, know that you equal to. But this really for my people though, cause evil grows inside of the kind of minds that our ego drove. So engulfed inside of they ride, they cannot see the road. They criticize your drive, apply, they won't even go. Cause fear and faith is the only thing in comparison. One requires courage, the other desires evidence. How can what was ever determine what never been? Then again, the devil is ignorance mixed with arrogance. But we are the conscious collective. And CC, so I hope you get the message. But we are the conscious collective. Or CC, so I hope you get the message. Well, thank you. You are too kind. You are what they call too kind. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. It's your boy Q. It's your host Q. It's your guy Q doing his thing in season 2. I knew I wanted to do an episode. I knew that. I was like, man, I need to record another episode. I got a few episodes recorded already. I have so much stuff I can talk about, but you know, talking to people, debating with my guy Jay, we going back and forth. He got these business ideas, so he feel like he a part of the executive producing team, and you know, he got these ideas and stuff, and we're going back and forth. And he said something that really got to me. You know, he was telling me, he said, hey man, I'm gonna challenge you because I know that's the only way you reply. You only respond to challenges. Yeah, I mean, I like a good challenge, and I know it could be a little difficult to understand, especially with me. Like with people, when they talk to me, it can sound like, man, you just doing a show to talk like that. You just doing it. You trying to, you know, what he called me? He called me some shit. I should look it up. I thought it was funny, but I heard it before. You know, his people from the west side, my people from the west side of Chicago. So he got a lot of similar sayings. He called me a snake oil salesman. That's what he called me. He called me a snake oil salesman. Because the things I say, it sound like I could just be bullshit. If you're not around me all the time, like I don't really kick it that much. But you know, Jay know me for a bunch of years now, and he knows me in the way of knowing me that you would, with me being in the suburbs and being a little different. You know, we hoop, we kick it time to time. We got our group chat. He the one, him and our brother Sosa, R.E. Sosa. He the one that they introduced me into the group chat. I never really had friends coming up, so I'm new to this friendship. So I'm trying to figure this shit out as I go. But it can seem like, you know, I'm just trying to say some shit that sound good or sound slick. No, this is really how I feel. This shit that I see and this shit I talk about, this is really me. And people that are close to me still don't believe it. I was married, goddammit. I was with a motherfucker over 16 years. I don't even think they believed. I don't know. Sometimes, you know, she would say certain things, but it can be difficult to believe, especially when you're living in a world where motherfuckers don't give a fuck. People will choose not to give a fuck consistently. And then when you come across somebody like me that's genuine, like I'm genuinely myself, I'm genuinely telling you who I am, flaws and everything else, and that's included. I may get angry in a situation where you feel like, man, Q, you shouldn't have got that mad. God damn it, that's me. I'm gonna be real. Even if I fuck up and my anger causes a situation, like Jay blames me. So at the gym we used to hoop at, a lot of people used to come, like right before I got there. Right before I got there, a lot of people used to come up to the gym. So when I got there, you know, people in the suburbs, I can't say all suburbs, just my experience. So in the suburbs, it seems like you be hooping with guys, and guys will say things like they'll call you the B word, like, you know, call you a bitch, like to your face. I don't play that. Not even a little bit. I actually have a funny story with a white friend of mine named Kyle. I don't know why I'm specifying that he's white. I just need y'all to know I'm diverse. No, but Kyle called me a bitch one time playing. But you know, that's how he play with his friends. And we are at work. I looked that motherfucker in his eyes and just told him like, hey man, I don't play like that. Like, I understand you don't mean it the way that I take it. I just don't play like that as a man. I can't tell you what to do or what not to do, but I just need you to know I don't play like that. But that shit happened like 10 years ago. Kyle got married recently, had a baby. Congratulations. Shouts out to you, Kyle. I texted him not too long ago. We was texting, talking shit. But he still brings that shit up. He talks about he was petrified. He said, Q, you don't know how scared I was looking at you in your face. He said, I didn't mean anything wrong by it. Like, he still brings it up. Now we laugh and joke about it. I remember one time, Kyle last got a boat. Kyle didn't had a boat since he was like 24. Kyle last had multiple boats. Kyle, the reason that I look at life differently in the sense of what I can go for. Like, I'm a dude from the city, and like I told you, they used to have commercials, education connection. Dude be like, what you doing, sitting on the couch? You can make up to $25,000 a year. I thought that shit was balling. I meet Kyle. Kyle asked like, yeah, I just bought my second house. My boat, I need to get my boat fixed. I said, a boat? I said, nigga, what kind of money you got that you can buy boats? So he broke the shit down about how it worked and all this other shit. He just increased the concept of possibility for me because I was so limited due to my surroundings. But Kyle last one day gonna ask me, hey Q, I just bought a new boat. He bought a new boat. I think it was red and black. Those was my colors coming up. So he said, man, Q, I got a new boat. I said, word? He said, you trying to come get on the boat? I looked that motherfucker in his eyes. I said, Kyle, I will never get on the boat with you. He said, why? I said, Kyle, last time you invited people that looked like me on the boat, we came over here and it wasn't fun. He laughing and shit, but he was so uncomfortable. I used to make so many race jokes to Kyle. That's how I do it. God damn it. You want to be my friend? You got to accept me for me because I'm going to accept you for you. That's the only way we can be cool. That's the only way we can be acquaintance. That's the only way we can be guys. Whatever it is, I'm going to accept you for you, and you're going to have to accept me for me. It's just that the person that I am, it can come off as bullshit if you're only used to bullshit. So I can tell you like, man, you're a god. I believe you're this important. I believe you're this. A motherfucker think like, man, you just trying to talk somebody into some slick shit. Like, I get nothing from it. Think about that. I get nothing from it. I get nothing from telling you you are God. I get nothing for doing this show. You motherfuckers ain't even start supporting yet. Hopefully, y'all start supporting. Appreciate you. So, I get my tattoo of my symbol, get it on my forearm. And I'm like, man, I really want to do an episode, but my arm hurt. I haven't got a new tattoo in many years. Like, I believe, now I'm not judging anybody. You can have a million tattoos if you want to. But me personally, for me to get a tattoo, it has to mean something to me. It has to mean something to me and my being, like my existence. When I die, or if I become an old ass man, I will never look back on this tattoo and regret it because the reason I got it will still stand. I have 4 tattoos now. I have 1 tattoo on my right arm. Well, I ain't gonna tell y'all all my tattoos. Something might happen with a crime and y'all be like, yeah, he got a tattoo on his right arm, but y'all not finna get me locked up. Y'all ain't finna get me. I might say something because I got episodes that's coming. Let me tell you something. Some episodes that's gonna be, hey, I'm gonna be talking that talk. You understand me? Y'all ain't finna get me locked up. So anyway, I just believe if I'm gonna get something tatted on me, it must mean something to me. Success, failure has nothing to do with it. It's all me. So I'm here and I want to do an episode. And I'm thinking, what should I do the episode about? You guys. So I wanted to play another audio recording, but I did some Google research and they said that 30-second rule not real. So look here, episode 2, when I play that little clip, I don't know who need to hear it. Leave me the fuck alone. You owe us some money. I'm not making money off this. I do this for negative money. And I'm calling you a god. Whoever you are that may hit episode 2 and be like, oh, I don't like that you used whatever many seconds. Like you may use 12 seconds or 7, however many seconds it was in the beginning. Where it was, what's his name? Neil deGrasse Tyson. And I forgot the comedian name. I think his name was Vaughn something. I forget his name. Anyway, so I was going to play another audio clip. The audio clip was going to be from the show The Boondocks. Remember the scene I tried to do with Jen Rummy or whatever Samuel L. Jackson character name? So I was going to try to go off that. I was going to play it and let you guys hear it, and it's funnier when they say it, but I ain't trying to get the podcast fucked up. So I'm going to just try to perform it. Y'all ready? Here we go. So Riley As Jim Rummy, while they in the car, they going to look for the Xbox killer, so Tom don't have to go to prison and deal with his biggest fear, which is crazy. I think it's episode 5 of season 1. So Riley asked Jim Rummy or Samuel L. Jackson character, because I don't know if this is really his name. I probably should have looked it up, but hey, we here now. So anyway, Riley asked, he said, y'all was in Iraq together? Jim Rummy say, yeah, we were in Iraq together. Riley says, what was y'all doing? Jim Rummy tell him, we were looking for weapons of mass destruction. Riley say, did you find any? That motherfucker Jim Rummy got mad as hell, snapped on his, you know good goddamn well we ain't find any. What you think, you some political humorist? That has nothing to do with what I want to talk about. I just like the scene, so I'm talking about it. So he tell him, we didn't find any weapons of mass destruction. He tell him that. Then he says something that I think is, I love it so much. It's a way that I look at things, but how they put it together is so perfect for me. So he tells Riley, as I always say, the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. Riley say, what? He said, just because you don't have evidence that something does exist does not mean you have evidence that something doesn't exist. Riley say, what? Jim Rummy say, which country you from? Riley say, what? Jim Rummy say, what ain't no country I ever heard of? They speak English and what? Riley say, what? English, motherfucker, do you speak it? Riley say, yeah. He said, so you understand the words I'm saying to you? Yeah. What I'm saying is there are known knowns and there are known unknowns, but there are also unknown unknowns, things we don't know that we don't know. You know, Riley said, what? Anyway, so I like that scene a lot. There are known knowns, so that's things you know. There are known unknowns, shit you know you don't know. Like, if I'm gonna hit the jackpot lottery tomorrow. Like, I know I don't know that shit. But there are also unknown unknowns. So this is the realm that I feel that religion, science, this is where they play in. Anyway, this is the unknown unknown. I think this is where we get religion, science, where they start to guess. Then they have faith in their guess. And then not only do they have faith in their guess, they try to convince others of their story. But when they try to convince others, they don't convince them in the sense of, hey, man, I believe this or boom, boom. No, this is the fact. This is what happened. God did this. It was a big bang. It did this. Yahshua did this. Jesus did this. Horus did this. Sheol did this. You got all these gods. Man, when Odin did it, like, no, Zeus was on bullshit, fucking everybody. As the second half of the show says, information is information. That's why I name it like that, for that exact reason, because there are unknown unknowns. But a motherfucker will try to convince you that their unknown is some shit they made up, and they don't even know what they don't know. They just put a story in its place and try to convince you to believe it. And they both do the same thing, whether it's religious, whether it's science. But in my opinion, they're the exact same thing. They're both religions because they both take faith. And the reason I played Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I kind of talked about it a little bit in the what was it, episode 2? I forgot what I named it or what I'm going to name it, but we'll figure that out. So in episode 2, I kind of touch on it. I don't like that bully type energy, even though I don't feel like Neil deGrasse Tyson is a bully, but I feel like his trying to push his belief in his story, he pushes it in comparison to like a religious type person's belief, as if though he's being condescending. And I feel like that's a relative of bullying. I don't like that because that's your idea. That's your belief. You're not God. You're not the one God. We are all gods. We are equal in my belief. So to just come at somebody for doing the exact same thing you're doing is mind blowing to me. I think it just creates more and more divisions. And as I tell you guys, I believe we're stronger together. But we find ways to get these reflections. And like I told you guys in season 1, what you put in between two reflections is up to you. Whether you put a plus sign to add it together, multiplication sign, that's what I say, like a family, when you come together as a reflection and create a child, and then 2 reflections, get a third and become the one holy trinity. Now you're a family. You know how I broke all that down in season 1. And if you don't know, go back and listen to it, because right now we're in wisdom. Now we finna talk, and I'm gonna show y'all how much information I got. But I just feel like instead of putting the verses in between the reflections, because we are all of creation, we all have jobs to do. So as I told you guys in season 1, The creator created creation in reflections to live out the patterns for the reason they exist. So that's why I tell you guys, I believe everything is reflective. Like you can see it in multiple levels. And I know I talk about my ideas so much, but let's do this. Let's be scientific, okay? Just so I can show you what I mean. Because I don't like the concept of the bullying of one to the other when they're both ideas. Don't belittle someone because you feel like you know something more than they do. You're only learning what another you taught you based on some shit that's a unknown. You're guessing also, and you're choosing to have faith. So don't shit on their choice. I can't tell you what to do. I just don't like it. I feel that we're all equal and we're all in this bitch together. And how can we be better if we're not accepting one another? Now, people gonna do all type of stupid shit and take it in crazy ways. We beat their ass. That's what we really should start doing, beating people the fuck up again. Yeah. I got beat the fuck up, and look what happened. Now, I beat up a lot of people on my journey. A lot. I can still feel some of the fights. And I'm going to tell you the truth. I still be ready to whoop them up ass right now. But anyway, instead of just finding a way to fight each other, I believe we would be nothing but better together if we built together as who we are. No matter our differences is what make us special. Imagine making a dish like a cake or whatever the fuck you can cook. I can make a pot roast from time to time, but my guy Jay told me all I know how to make is slave food, but that's neither here nor there. But imagine you making, let's say a cake, because people use cake as the analogy all the time, so I'm gonna use cake. Imagine if you didn't put different ingredients. Imagine if you just got the cake, you put more cake, and then some more cake, and some cake. You would never get the capability of this delicious ass cake that I'm be like, you know what, go ahead, cut me a little slice of that. You would never get there because everything was the same. Our differences is what make us the amazing dish, the amazing possibilities, because we can never be what we would be without each other. So if you're not yourself and you're an imitation of somebody else, what the fuck are we making? We're not even making what we're capable of. We're making what the fuck somebody else told us, some ingredients somebody else told us, as if though we don't have ideas and can't come up with a dish on our motherfucking self. It don't gotta be a cake. It can be a cupcake. We can make some brownies. We can do a bunch of shit. If we got ingredients, you can do anything. Imagine seasoning your food with just one seasoning. Like, I'm gonna just put this. Like, no. That shit make the flavor pop. It give it possibilities it never had. So in my opinion, when I'm sitting there seeing somebody bully somebody for their beliefs, their ideals, because it doesn't match what the fuck you say, I don't like that shit. I don't like bullies. So that's my thing with, what's his name, Neil deGrasse Tyson. And I watched this like 2-hour and 45-minute debate with, what's his name, Ken Ham. He's a creationist. So he believes in God, but he also, studies science and he knows science. I like him. He makes very good points in my opinion. And if you guys want to go look it up, it's Ken Ham. And I think it's versus, what's his name? Bill Nye, the science guy. Now, I don't know if I can get, a defamation or anything for saying his name, but he said the shit. Y'all can go watch the video. So, y'all don't want to know what I was about to say. I was about to say I'll whoop his ass, but why would I think that? What is wrong with me that I would think that? Blame my environment. Anyway, so it was Ken Ham versus Bill Nye, the science guy. It was a debate about if they should put the concept of God in schools, because they put the concept of the Big Bang in school, but they also put the concept of God. It's a whole ordeal. That's a social thing. I'm not going to go into that right now. So they were just debating, and Ken Ham was asking Bill Nye, the science guy, questions. And I told you, it's power in those. He was asking Bill Nye questions that science has that Bill Nye couldn't answer. And instead of Bill Nye just acknowledging the question or even trying to come up with an answer or even just being honest and saying, we don't know yet, or we just don't know, he decided to attack the belief of someone believing in God. Well, Ken Ham will have you believe that a man in the sky. You see how it's just being condescending and disrespectful to someone else's belief. And you're speaking to someone that studies the same things you study, but you're still willing to defame it because that belief goes against what you believe. And I know I talk shit about this a lot. And motherfucker be like, well, Q, your ass always talking about what the fuck they shouldn't be doing. How you know what they got going on over there? You don't know the science. You're not a scientist. So how you know they just not right and motherfuckers is stupid for believing in the motherfucker in the sky? I hear you. I can tell you some of the shit I know. I know a lot. That'll be too long. How about this? I got one. Remember in season 1, I talked about the concept of the color spectrum, and I just brushed over it. I was like, oh yeah, we only have access to certain spectrums of colors and boom, 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 right? So let me go into detail on that. Science says we have, science says we have access to 7 colors of the spectrum, and they call it Roy G. Biv. So that stands for red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. What's crazy is indigo is like a version of blue, and just like violet, like it's a version of purple. That's why the rainbow looks the way it looks, but I'll get into it. So the reason it does that, right? They say we have only access to these 7. That doesn't mean that there's not more than 7 colors. They're saying visually, this is all we have access to. It's like the sun. So the sun is supposedly actually white. Now, I could take this. I'm going to try to keep it science, but I just want y'all to see something. See something that I'm seeing. So the sun is actually supposed to be white, right? That's the correct color of the sun. Now I can get into how they give you pictures of the Son of God as being white. I'm just saying if we was to blend it together, because that's what I believe. I believe all this shit come together. The more different stories, we'll get closer to the truth. That's just my belief. So in science, the actual sun is white. And then Christian beliefs with the pictures they show you, the commercialized Christianity. Now I can tell you who the picture of the guy is, but I don't know if that's true. That's just information I read. It could be a lie. That could really be Jesus. But anyway, so they show him as white. But what if that would also support my claim that we were created in reflections, meaning that we do the exact same things on multiple levels to live out the pattern, like the pattern of how your heart beat. Your heart beats to a pattern, whether it's so your heart beats to a pattern. Maybe it has rhythm, but that's neither here nor there. I ain't gonna get over there. So anyway, so your heart beats to a rhythm or a pattern. So we created in reflections, meaning we're all doing the exact same things to live out the pattern, meaning we're gonna follow these steps. Just like your blood flows, it follows that pattern. That's what science looks into to try to figure shit out. They look at the pattern that already exists, and then they make up stories, or they come up with theories and ideas to try to explain, understand, or even justify the pattern they observed, not created. So what if the reason that in science they tell you the correct color of the sun is actually white, and then in this Christian religion we're in, or I ain't gonna say we're in, but I live in America, for anybody to hear this is how we see Jesus mainly. Except Donnie had a black Jesus on his wall. I seen somebody put it on social media not too long ago. I was like, damn, Donnie was the only motherfucker I seen with that black Jesus picture. But that's neither here nor there. But what if they were supposed to put that picture out? Just see if you can see the correlation I'm trying to put together. What if they were supposed to put the picture out as a white son of God? And then science reflectively tells you the correct color of the sun is white. But you know, also in science, they say that white is actually comprised of a lot of colors. Like that's what creates white in science. Now, granted, I know somebody probably listening right now. Hell no, get the fuck out of here. Black is what is filled all the colors. That's why it's black. So all the colors come together to make black. You can't make white with all the colors. Look, I'm just telling you what science said. Don't get mad at me. Just listen. See if you're putting together what I'm putting together. I'm just trying to show you something I see in imagery and something I believe I see in existence, just in a reflection and a pattern that they're following. So if the sun or the white sun or white is comprised of multiple colors in science, it sounds like there's options to choose from. Just my opinion, just looking at a pattern I see in creation. It's just my perspective of what I perceive. So they give us the white son of God that was gifted to us, whether we accept it or not. Whether we be like, oh, we fuck with the sun. I saw some shit today. They trying to block out some of the sun rays. Oh my goodness, this shit like a evil villain. I'm not saying who doing it because I don't know. And I don't think you'll ever know who really in control of this bullshit. But I peep bullshit, but that's neither here nor there. We get shown the white son of God that was gifted to us, whether we choose to believe it or not. The correct color is white in science. So no matter which color of the son of God you perceive it as in our or your You ever notice the only difference between our and your is why? You ever see, this is how my brain works. You don't think that's also reflective? The difference between our, collectively, us, our, and yours. You remember I told you guys I believe the reflection of blame is responsibility? So let's say something breaks in the earth and we're all collectively in here together. Instead of saying we broke it, what if you say you broke it? So it's your problem to fix now. If we broke it, it'd be our problem to fix. If we all in this bitch together, why are we so quick to blame them for what they did? As if though we don't play some part. We were some part of their existence. So the only difference between our problem, our issue to fix, our stories, and yours, oh, that's your problem to fix. That's your shit. Oh, that's your story. I don't agree with that. That's something different than what I think. We can't both exist at the same time. So it's my story, your story. That's it. It's yours. The only difference is why. And you know, I told you guys that's the first question for creation. You know, I told you the three-letter words equal to three-letter word, which is God. That was me just showing y'all the little connection, but I just think that's interesting. The difference between your and our is why, and that's the question, power in the question. You get it. You get it. I hope y'all rocking with me because this season 2, I'm about to really try to tell y'all some stuff. I'm just relaying the message and trying to give it to you in Q terms. But anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, I was talking about the sun being white in science, and then even with the religion they show the Son of God white. But I digress. No matter which color we see the Son of God with our limited perception, remember, we only got access to 7 colors of the spectrum. So no matter which color we see or perceive the Son of God with our limited perception, it was still gifted to us to help us live. You don't see that connection? Like without the sun, we would die. If God created the sun, that sun is the son or the Son of God. The white light that comes to help us, just like the sun rays come down. And do y'all get what I'm saying? But that's why I see the reflection with the science and things like that. I see it a lot too. They do it in astrology, but I look at it as we're caught as reflections to live out the patterns for the reason we exist. That's even with us believing we have free will and or the power of choice. It's still limited by the laws of the Creator or the Most High or God or whatever you choose to believe in, the Big Bang, science, whatever. But we are still limited in those laws. Like we have to live out the patterns for the reason we exist. And remember, I always tell you, I believe the reasoning right there, that's what God is. We don't know that. We don't know the reason we're living out these patterns. And it's like when you make your own story, you go, man, I got free will. And if you have this free will, I'm saying make better choices. You have a lot to do with everything. You are God. We are part of this one thing together. This is all my belief. But even in that free will, we still show a reflection in the sense of I can see the correlation between the two. That's what I'm always talking about. Everything is so reflective. Well, you got the white Son of God and you got the white sun. And you can sit there and argue that with the motherfucker. Hell no, get the fuck out of here. Everybody know the sun black. Ain't the black hole, the densest and light can't escape. And I think we're just stuck in God's law, which is our pattern for the reason we exist. And we just don't know the reason. We can see the pattern clearly. That's all science does. They watch for the pattern and then they give you what they call an hypothesis. That's their idea. Religion did the same thing. That's what I'm saying. Like, where is the fight at? Why do you have to fight? Because somebody came up with their own idea. We have the pattern that we have similar information doing similar things based on what we think. But if we're both gods, why can't your ideas exist alongside my ideas? And we can even find a way to put a plus between our reflections. We may find the truth within it. Because in my opinion, man's law are meant to be broken. But God's law, it just is. So whenever you mix God law with man law, God's law always wins. For example, you could be like, oh, gravity, what goes up must come down. Man, like I invent a plane on you. You tell me a plane that ain't landed or crashed. You tell me a plane that can go up and stay there forever. God's law always wins. You can feel like, oh, I'm 6'5", but you 5'5", and you 30. There's no way you gonna ever get to what you feel because God's law told you you're not growing no more. Like, let it go. You 5'5". You like, no, I think I got a growth spurt. No, you didn't. You did not. God law is. You better go fuck around and play with man law. Don't fucking with God. That law. God damn it. God law don't play that. But if I get into all that, we'll be in a whole different episode. What was I talking about? Oh, yeah. In science, they say white light is comprised of the colors. So it's comprised of colors. White light is made by multiple colors. So white light comes down from the sky. Oh, I'm finna tell y'all why the sky is blue. That's why I was doing all this. I forget. I want to tell you guys about why science say the sky is blue. Hey, I told y'all I digress. Y'all know me. It's season 2. Y'all know me. But you know I'm gonna get there. Don't act funny because we got company. We probably got a few listeners. Shouts out to the new listeners. Love y'all. You are God. Don't forget that. We are the conscious collective. You know, I'm here for you. But anyway, I was going to tell you why the sky is blue. And I wanted to tell it to you scientifically. Because I know a lot of time I be talking, I could be leaning toward my beliefs more, which I'm going to do. I'm supposed to. These my beliefs. I'm just making sure I let you know these are my beliefs. I'm not telling you that what I'm saying is fact. I'm not telling you that my ideas are the right ones. What I'm saying is, and trying to get you to do is, think for yourself. And I'm showing you how fun this shit is, in my opinion. I'm showing you how empowering it is to tell you you're a God. Your ideas matter, man. You as a person, you are valued. Whatever you feel like keeping you down. Oh man, I can't believe I did this to my kids when I was going through what I was going through. All you have is today. Don't beat yourself up in a place that's a part of existence. These are reflective. Some bad had to happen for some good to happen. It was just your time to do what you think is bad, because if you create your reality, you decide what's right or wrong, because the only one that can tell us the truth is God. Just like God law is, God is. Whatever we choose to call him, whatever name you want to give him, cool. When I say God, I'm saying the title. And we are made of that, which makes us little gods. Like we little gods out here. We are of that. Whatever you choose to believe, you are of that. So I lean toward my beliefs when I talk. So I'm like, let me give y'all some science to show y'all I know a little bit of stuff too, y'all. You know what? I'm going to show my ass today. I'm going to show y'all, okay? So I told y'all that the sun is supposedly white in science. It's filled with a bunch of colors. After that, what happens is the sun rays everybody knows about. When the sun rays come down, it's coming down this white light, which is filled with different colors. So our atmosphere is filled with dust. Like that's what makes our atmosphere in science. That's how we're able to breathe the air we breathe. That's why we're able to be outside and not get crushed like on other planets where the gravity is ridiculous and the terrain is so hot or so drastically cold, like science said. That's what we got. So in that, it's dust basically. So all this dust surrounds us and it has sand and all that shit in the air. All that shit we can't see is called particles. So all these different particles, they have multiple colors. And remember, we only limited to 7 colors of the spectrum. Roy G. Biv. That's how you can remember if you want to know the colors. So when the ray come down white, if the wave, I'm trying to tell it to you without sounding too nerdy, but I got to tell you I know science. So anyway, when the white light comes down in all these colors, if the particle, if the wave or the vibration of a certain color of a particle that's in the air matches the vibration or the wave of that color, it will refract or it will like bounce off and like spread that color. So imagine 7 colors coming down in a wave. And then we have blue particles in the air that match the blue wave of the white light that comes down from the sun. So then when they hit each other, you know what? I'll get into explaining electrons then too. I'll do both. Okay, fuck it. We can do that. So when the white light comes down with all its colors and the blue wave that's already in the atmosphere from the dust we have, when they hit each other, instead of it going through, it reflects and then it blasts out a bunch of blue. So it's like removing the blue light. Well, now that's what it does in the sunset. So what happens is just because of that reflection, that's what spreads it out amongst the sky, which boom, that's why they say the sky is blue. I think they call it Rayleigh scattering. So a dude figured it out. This is his story. I can't prove none of this shit, but this is what science say. I'm not being disrespectful to science. I'm just telling y'all about it. You know, it's his story. It could be true. He could be right, but it's information. If you want to look it up, the shit is called Rayleigh scattering. Similar to why The sun look orange at time because of the spectrum, and you get like 3 main spectrums, and then the blue light gets removed, and then now you over there with the red and the oranges and the yellow side of the spectrum, and that's what causes that. That's why when the sun set, it looks redder because it takes so much more blue. But that's just science. That's science. I bet somebody probably listen to this shit said, what? Oh man, I told you I want to talk to y'all today. Y'all want to know if I know science? Because I don't want to be disrespectful to science. I don't want them to think I'm just talking with no information. Like I'm just over here just spewing shit out my ass. Like, no, I'm telling you guys, everything is your perception. Your perception is what you're limited to. What you're limited to seeing, what you're limited to hearing. That's your perception. So you're making a perspective predicated on that perception. So what I'm saying is, if you don't have a wide enough view of something, how the fuck couldn't your perspective be limited? If you're not willing to look at something else because you just don't believe it or somebody convinced you or some other shit, you don't even want to understand it. You just, oh, I don't know about it, but I'm arrogant enough to think I'm right. What did I tell you ignorance mixed with arrogance is? I believe that's the one true devil we have to deal with. I just don't see how it doesn't make sense. And I explained all this in season 1, how your perception, what you see, what you hear, you use that with your ideas and what you choose to believe or not believe. And you use that to filter into your perspective. Now, when you have a perspective, this is where your conscience supersedes your actions. So now you created a perspective and then you come up with shit like ideas based on them beliefs, and you act off those things in which you choose to believe. So I'm the motherfucker that's saying, hey, right here at this place, I think this is where you're not looking. Because if somebody can manipulate you to believe something, you're not even thinking for yourself. You become a stranger to yourself and even to creation, to the world, because somebody funneled in through your belief in some way, and it's usually fear. You get scared of something. And I'm just saying, man, whatever you're scared of, you strong enough to face it, bro. You strong enough to face it, sis. I believe in you. I don't know you. I believe in you, but I know you are God. If everything got to have a reflection and I'm here like this, I mean, you got to be there like that. It only makes sense. I'm no one special. Dude, I grew up poor. I used to pee in the bed for a long time. I got bullied at one point. Dude, I was married and now I'm divorced. I'm not saying I'm better than anybody. It's just what I can see. So I'm just like, man, I value you so much. And if I'm this, imagine what you are. That's why I say it's inspirational. But when the motherfuckers have a limited perception, of course their perspective gonna be off. And instead of just blame, is your problem. My solution was to take responsibility. Because if I see some shit you don't see and I don't even tell you about it, how good am I? That's why I say we just equal. I'm saying not I'm just a God. I'm saying you are God. Just talking like you hear my voice, you're a God. And that motherfucker that don't hear my voice, that you ain't tell to listen to my damn show, tell them. And if they don't believe me, tell them come listen to me. Come listen to me and prove to me you're not a God. Prove to me that you're not the most valuable thing walking this earth. Prove it to me. Listen to what I say. Expand your perception, what you hear, because you don't really see me unless you follow me. Shouts out to if you do follow me. But you hear me. So you get a perception. I'm saying expand it. Think about the shit I just said and then tell me how you feel about it. So if you are a God like I believe you are, and your reality is predicated on what you choose to believe, so you have all the power, and it's based on your perspective. Because his story is his story. It's a beautiful story. I liked it. I like reading a lot of them. But that's why when I come in with my own perspective, it seems foreign when I tell you that I care about you, because you're not used to that. You're not used to talking to somebody that truly mean this shit. Somebody that'll be in your life and tell you, hey, I care for you. And you seeing like this thing happen, it may have been an inconvenience, but I care for you, so I'll do it. People not used to that. They usually get scared because they got hurt before. Or they've been convinced through fear that that shit ain't real. That means something's coming along with it. So you always got your guard up. This is just a consequence of the fear you succumb to. I don't sit there and blame anybody. Why would I blame you? If it has nothing to do with me, I have nothing to take responsibility for. You are God. You have all the power, but that shit only resides inside yourself. A motherfucker tell you a different idea, you ready to fight him. Motherfuckers killed each other. I read history too. Motherfuckers out here killing each other because somebody didn't believe what they said they should believe because they believe it. But they actions even show they don't believe it. How the fuck you preach a God that want peace and you killed the motherfucker in his name? Come on, man. Something not making sense. Then you said, God told me to do it. Then you wrote a book about it. God told me to kill a motherfucker. God said if I don't kill them motherfuckers, he gonna help me kill them. That's what God said, he gonna help me kill them. Y'all ever read this shit? You got Ares. He's the god of war. Motherfuckers out there killing each other. Them Spartans, they descendants from Hercules. That shit is just crazy to me. And when I see it that way, I go like, let me start telling motherfuckers different perspectives and see if they talk to a motherfucker like me with no malice in their heart. I got no malice. I got love for you, actually. Unless you do something stupid, then what they say, when it's up, then it's stuck. I don't give a fuck. It's going to be what it's going to be. You show me who you are, I'm going to react to that. But up until that moment, you still a God I value. And I still value you as a God after you piss me off. But goddamn it, we're going to have to do what we got to do. Goddamn it. Either I'm going to have to stop talking to you, or I'm going to have to fuck you up every time I see you. But that's neither here nor there. But motherfuckers do that shit because of some shit they thought. And I'm the bad guy. I'm the aggressive guy. Because I address a motherfucker with mean energy, if you will. Like, man, Q, you got to calm down. It ain't that serious. A motherfucker was killing people because they didn't believe what they thought they should believe. All because they had a different perspective. And we all guessing. Like, okay, I'll give you one of my different perspectives. I don't know if this shit right. I don't know if it's true, but it's just a question. There's power in the question. So it seems like religion and science, they both agree darkness came first. That's what it seemed like. Oh, in Egyptology, it was the noon. It was nothing but darkness. It was the noon. Then it was God. It was nothing but darkness. Out of eternal darkness, let there be light. In science, they tell you the Big Bang, it was nothing but darkness, then the Big Bang. It seems like everybody agreed darkness came first. I'm not sure. How we know? How we know darkness came first? You tell me. Huh? So what made darkness come first outside of your perspective? Can somebody tell me? Can somebody tell me? Because if you weren't there to see it, if you weren't privy to its conception, how can you say you know something then? Especially when it was based on information you created. Not saying the information ain't amazing. I love reading these stories. This shit is great. I'm team story. I told you I love stories. But it's information you created that you gave you, telling it about some shit that you actually don't know. Nobody was there to see the Big Bang happen. Nobody was looking like, man, they go that Big Bang, I'm going to tell my kids about it. And from that point, when he tell his kids about it, if his kids didn't see it, the only way it's true is because they believe it's true. That's the only thing. It's their perspective. Because I already told you how perspective is created. What you're able to see, what you perceive, then usually leads to your perspective based on what you believe, because you have all the power. So what could you see that can prove this is true? I know motherfucker probably going right now. Well, when you a baby, your eyes is closed and then you open them. So darkness came first, then light. Okay, I get you. But what if before the baby becomes that, what if they had to close their eyes for it to be open? What if the baby went from like in the sky, right? If that's how you want to look at it. Let's say the baby was in the sky and he was chilling and he agreed to come down as sperm, I guess. And he in there and his eyes was burning. Or his or her eyes were burning as they was growing. And then they said, I got to keep my eyes closed because this stuff in here burned my eyes. And that's why their eyes was closed. But they had to close them. And then they came out and opened them again. It's just the way to think about things. Listen to me. Listen to me. This is nothing but just saying you can look at shit differently. But it's based on your perception. So if you didn't see it, that means another you told you the information and you chose to believe them. They have no evidence to prove this. It's all faith. But science says the same thing. In science, it tells you that, so you know how they say the universe is expanding? So they are saying that at some point, generations to come after us will not have the same cosmos to look at that we have now to determine what came first. So let's say 200 years go by, those astronomers will not see the sky the way we see it. They won't be able to see the stars we see. They will move out. You know how Pluto no longer is a planet? The universe is constantly expanding. This is what science says. So that means that they could be without a bunch of information they need to come up with an idea or a concept of whether it was a God, a Big Bang, or whatever. The only thing that keeps your story alive is the fact is if they choose to just read that and believe it. But what if 5,000 years before us, let's go back far. What if 5,000 years before us, they had astronomers, the world was different, so their concept of the start of everything would have been different because they had different cosmos to study. And if you don't want to think they were smart enough to do that, some people go there. They say, man, they ain't had that technology. I went there. I don't know. A lot of shit get burnt up. A lot of shit get knocked down if you ain't hiding something while you're doing that. But that's just me. So let's just say they didn't have the technology to look, and we're looking now. What did we miss out on before we got the technology to see it? It's a unknown because we don't know what space was in the cosmos before we knew there was space in the cosmos. So our belief started from perception or a story. So which one is it? Did you see it do all these things you're claiming it does scientifically or even spiritually or religiously? Or did somebody give you their story and you just believed it? But their story is only predicated on their perception at that time. And when the fuck did humans stop lying? So do you think the story that was the original story got passed down and motherfuckers just kept telling the truth? You tell me how many people you know gonna constantly tell the truth. Don't worry. I'll wait. And I get the science shit. I get it. It's complex. It's convoluted because the minds of those, they thought so deeply. They thought deeply enough to use their imagination to create ideas and concepts out of nothing, like a big bang. Do you not see that connection? Your ideas come out of nothingness. You don't know what you knew before you knew it. It was an unknown. But it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Like there's a person probably right now in the country that never heard my podcast, and it's a lot of those. They never heard my name. They don't know if a Q exists, but that doesn't mean I don't exist. So imagine what we don't know, and got the audacity to tell somebody their idea is wrong because it's not yours. We are all guessing. Let us guess. This shit is fun. Use your imagination. They did. You still telling his story. What your story sound like? So if we as the creation, this amazing, the creator that created us must be so much more incomprehensible because they were able to think of all the things we will ever, have ever, and will ever think, even and or need. The planet gives us everything we need. That means that that creator thought of all that shit. So how can one feeble-minded being, now that's feeble-minded in like the grand scheme of creation itself, but feeble-minded beings have the audacity to tell another feeble-minded being that they can't believe what they want because you believe you know what the creator wants and or said. So you're going to criticize somebody for their beliefs, yet you also have beliefs. No one can prove their story. It's just a beautiful story. But it's the audacity for me. It's the ignorance mixed with the arrogance for me. It's invoking the devil for me. So you're that ignorant because we don't know, but to still have that ignorance like we all have and be arrogant enough to act like you just know. And then even harm people and attack people and hate them, create your isms. Because we all just guessing. We all just have beliefs. Because in reality, we all fall short to the glory of God, the God. And I just believe we all are equal. So the only reality we live in, or the only reality we know, and like I told you guys about my beliefs, I said, I believe that everything was created in reflections. Like up couldn't be up without down, so they had to come into existence together. And your existence is what makes the left and right, up and down, because you have to have someone there to perceive it. And just like God perceived you as when you existed. That's just my belief. But what if the darkness, when it was created, it didn't actually come first, but maybe think of it like a moving wave that's constantly going. And what if you were able to perceive darkness first, but light actually came into existence at the same time? So if you were standing on the other side of creation, you would have seen light first and then darkness come through it. Or, just something to think about. They want to agree. Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson, they don't agree like that. They won't fight. You got a different beliefs. I'm science. You stupid. You got all that faith. What you got? We got scientific evidence. Like you created the scientificals. What was I talking about? I was talking about the particles in the air, right? We could do this. We could do this. So, I told you guys, I know a little bit. I did a little research. I did a little research on chemistry, a little research in physics. I'm not a physicist, but I know some stuff. I'm not a astronomer. I don't want Neil deGrasse Tyson. Like, let me tell you about this. I didn't read all the stuff you read. I'm just looking at what I'm looking at, and I realize everybody got ideas. So say what you want. Because I know I be going into space, like talking about the sun. What if we went the other way? Like, let's not go big, because, once you get big and you get into space, now you're getting into God territory. That's why the science and the religious people be fighting. My guess is better than your guess. Your guess ain't shit. But let's go the other way. And when I say the other way, like instead of going big, remember I gave you guys the analogy in season 1? I'm like, remember you standing in the house and you get bigger, right? Let's say we go the other way. For the people that don't remember what I'm talking about from season 1, in season 1, I made an analogy about perception. And I said that you could be sitting in the place you're sitting in right now. Like if you're sitting somewhere listening to me, you can picture yourself right now sitting in this place. Now you can look down and what you would see would be the floor. And then if you grew to be 100 feet tall and you still stay in that place, when you look down in the same place and looked at the exact same place, you would probably see like the house. You would see the house beneath you. And then if you got as tall or you got on an airplane and you look down and you were over on the airplane in that exact spot on the earth and you look down, what you see, you may see terrain. You may see shapes and mountains and things like that. And then if you were in a space shuttle right above Earth, right at that exact spot, and you look down, you will see a planet. So if you're creating your perspective based on your perception, you don't know what you are also seeing because you only know what you saw. So I talked about the big way. Let's go the small way. Let's do some more science. Y'all want to do some more science? Oh yeah, we doing science today. We doing science today. So in science, we're going to go small. So from my understanding, it goes molecules, then you got atoms, electrons around the nucleus, and I think those are called valence electrons. The ones that's around the nucleus, they in the atomose shell of the electron. Those valence electrons are the furthest from the nucleus, like spinning around it, if you will, in the shell. So the valence electrons, those are used for either bonding or reacting to other atoms. I remember something about using using a periodic table. So in the periodic table, you will see the numbers of the valence electrons. How many valence electrons? I think it's 1 through 7. If you got 1 through 7 of your valence electrons, that's like of possible bonds or reactions with the other element. Okay, imagine you got 3 valence electrons. That means you can make a connection with like hydrogen, and you could do another connection. You could be like mercury, and you could be like, I'm gonna fuck with nickel or something, right? That's your 3 possible either connections where you bond with them or you react. That's what it is. It's either connecting or reacting. That's what you use the valence electrons for. I think it's 7 groups of them. And when I'm saying bond is like connecting. When a valence electron connects with the other element, it can either absorb energy to show they have a connection or a bond, or it will react where there's a lack of a connection. So instead of absorbing energy, it releases energy. Instead of the 2 elements bonding, like having a connection, there's a reaction. That's what they call like photons. But that'll get us all into ionization. But anyway, so I was talking about the 7 groups, but there's also like an 8th group on the periodic table. The 8th group meaning it has 8 valence electrons. I think that's called like a octet. I think that's called like a full octet. It's something like that when you got 8 valence electrons. So being in the 8th group, it makes them special. So being in the 8th group on the periodic table, they the special table. That's because they considered stable. Like they can't bond with nobody, like or react. I don't bond or react. Like I'm solo dolo. I don't need you niggas. I don't need you niggas. That's what they call like a stable element. I think they call noble gases. But anyway, back to the valence electrons. Yeah, so the valence electron determines how many bonds or reactions you can make or it can make. You know, somebody probably listen to this. Hopefully y'all play this for somebody to do science. They'll correct me if I'm wrong, because I think I'm right. But anyway, it's supposed to go molecules, and then you go deeper. Then molecules are made up of atoms. Hey, y'all remember, because I think I talked about this last season. Remember last season when I told y'all about science, when they thought the smallest particle, they thought it was the atom until like 1897, a nigga named J.J. Thomson, he quote unquote discovered it. It ain't already exist. He discovered it. So J.J. Thomson, he's supposed to have discovered that the atom wasn't the smallest anymore. It wasn't the smallest particle, because the atom, check this out, this shit get crazy. The atom was made up of electrons, which would mean now the electron is the smaller particle, but nobody got fired. Like science was lying to you about this one thing they just discovered. It's not that it didn't already exist. They just couldn't see it yet. So the word in science is atom is the smallest particle until you learn that it's made up of electrons. You see, it wasn't anything you created, because you didn't create what does exist. Nobody did. We just in this motherfucker kicking it. But anyway, don't get me into all that. Anyway, I think like if you zoom in on a living organism, do it have to be living? That's a good question. I don't know if it has to. I think it has to be living. I'm almost sure it has to be living. But anyway, so you zoom in, you go deep enough, you see the molecules, you go deeper, you see the atoms, you go deeper, you see the electron, and you see the electrons around the nucleus, and then even the nucleus that's made up of particles. They call those protons and neutrons. Side note. Where I'm from, if you're not like gang affiliated, if you ain't out there with the guys, if you ain't with the guys, they call you a neutron. Boy, you did not like being called a neutron. I used to see it. I know one dude, you know what? This ain't story time with you. We supposed to be talking science. Anyway, yeah, like they call you a neutron though. Niggas did not like being called neutrons. But anyway, what I was talking about? Oh yeah, the nucleus. So the nucleus, that valence electron and stuff I was telling y'all about, that's made up of protons and neutrons. So they say if you zoom in on just one of those neutrons, right, like a proton or neutron, you zoom in, that's also made up of particles. But that's as far perceivable as science has gone or can go. But what happens? Here comes the geniuses of science to come in like superheroes and guess. They guess that there was more to be perceived, even though that was all they can see. The geniuses did this. The geniuses said, oh, we can't see further than that? Let me tell you something. I bet you it's some more shit back there. We just can't see it yet. If we didn't see it before and we saw this, that must mean it must be more shit to go. Makes sense, don't it? Just logical sense. So they made up a story. The geniuses came in, made up a story of what it could be. This is how you get string theory. So string theory, for those who don't know, because I told you we talking science today, just in case you was wondering. So for string theory, they believe that the strings connect those particles that's beyond the neutron. You go deeper into that and it's still particles. So in string theory, they think that, well, their theory, which is called a theory, it's an idea. So their theory is there's strings that connect those particles inside the neutron, and they're constantly vibrating. When the strings vibrate, they produce or create the particles that they can see that are in the neutron. I think loop theory says something similar too, but I think they say it's loops that connect it. They both guessing. They both got to guess. They both in science, so they guessing. But how is that anything other than faith? You call it a theory, and it came from a guess. Isn't that the same thing? You're accusing the people that chooses to put a deity, some sort of God that they wrote a story about and they believe? That make them stupid? To have faith and believe. You're doing the same thing, aren't you? You just choose to believe and have faith in man and their creation. That's your prerogative. If that's what you want to do it. I'm even okay with you writing your books to support and explain your beliefs and why you believe them. I just disagree with judging someone for doing the same thing because they're not doing it the way you believe is correct. To me, that seems like that will remove some possibilities for us to bond atoms of creation. And that's only simply because our outer shell or our outermost shell, which I believe would be likened to our thoughts and our emotions, that causes us to react to someone different instead of trying to bond where we can. Because some of us believe we are solid, like that valence electron in group 8, on the periodic table. Remember I was just telling you guys about? So I would look at the valence electrons like they were your thoughts or emotions. And that's what's out there left for bonding. But how can we know? How can we know what's our valence electron number? What's going on out there in our outermost shell? Is your ignorance and arrogance telling you that you're stable? Are you just unaware, but just arrogant enough to say, yeah, I'm good, I'm stable? So in your mind, you believe you're in group 8. But how would you know if you were stable? It's in your outermost shell. Let me ask you a question. Do you feel stable all the time? Like when no one else is around, it's just you. You left with nothing but your thoughts. How do you feel? Look, it's just a question. I'm not trying to put or project anything on you. It's just a question. I just want you to ask yourself if you know you're stable, or do you not even know yourself enough to know your outermost electrons, thoughts, and emotions? You don't know that well enough to be stable. That's why I'm asking, are you invoking the devil? Being ignorant to your own thoughts and feelings, but also so arrogant enough to say you know. In my opinion, it seems like you would be saying it out of fear of taking your own journey of knowledge of self, because the pain you would have to face on that path, you may be afraid you're too weak to face it. You're in fear of it. But look, that's just something to think about. Just something to think about. I'm trying to show you the correlation of the reflections with the atoms and how the electron has the outermost shell, the valence electron. Do you not see the reflection in that? Or is it just me and I'm showing it to you for the first time? You ain't got to lie to me. Tell me the truth. But it's just something to think about. So if it applies to you, remember, we are the conscious collective. And we hit an E-zone down the road with you as we all take this journey. And no matter what our reasons are for our journey, because we're individuals, just like the elements on a periodic table, we're all individuals. We're all our own element. But some of us can work together and create something more than we could have ever been alone. Just like I told you about the ingredients to the cake. If you don't have each one of those ingredients, put them together and find a way to put the right pressure or heat to add to those mixture of things, to bring it together, and we can become something greater than we could have ever been alone. This is my belief. I just believe we're stronger together. It's not a plea with motherfuckers that want to be fucked up elements. It's not a plea for motherfuckers who I'm going to just walk around. I'm in group 8. I ain't got no connections. I'm stable. I don't need no element. And we looking at the motherfuckers like, nigga, you got one valence electron. Get your shit together, for don't nobody connect to you. All you do is react. I see these reflections living out the patterns, and they're both the same pattern in my perception. So if we're going to be elements on a periodic table, let's try to first learn our outermost shell. What's your valence electron? How many do you have? What group do you feel you in? Let's say you have 7 valence electrons. You got a lot. You so close to stable. If you only had one more valence electron, and instead of accepting that you have 7, you start just saying, no, fuck it, I got 8. And you missing out on connections you could have with other elements, when you could come together and create something better, something more than what you are. You come together and you have a relationship, whether it's a friendship, a motherfucker you go to work with, they become a part of your life. There's a possibility for connection, but there's a possibility for reaction. And I'm saying the choice is yours. You have all the power. So instead of just reacting to a motherfucker because they believe something differently than you believe, maybe we can find where we bond at and come together and get closer to the truth. Because how are we anything other than greater together? So I'm going to ask the arrogant people, whether you're religious, but I was talking for science today. Religion, I come for you too. But for the people in the sciences, that's what I'm speaking for, or speaking toward and using your information. For you ones that think it's stupid to believe outside of your belief because your math and things you created and your stories that you told equate to a belief that even though it sounds like a belief to me, so you had to have faith. If the religious people called it the God theory, can we stop being so ignorant and arrogant toward one another when we realize we're all just guessing? So I know when I tell somebody and people see me and they hear me talk like this and they think I'm trying to put on some facade or trying to be a snake oil salesman. When I say these type of things and how I believe we're connected, this is really who I am. I didn't just come up with this shit and just say, fuck what everybody else says. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to have a conversation. I'm willing to first understand and then retort. So if I tell you something like you're a god, I'm not just pulling this out my ass. I have information to back it up. I have just as much, if not more information in my backing up that you are a god than some story that somebody gave you that says you are not. But that doesn't mean I know anything. But I can see patterns. I can see reflections. And I got faith in you. And as I tell you, don't let your past bully your present into becoming your future. Because what they call pure is tampered with. The cure can't answer it. You're lost in a world looking for answers that's answerless.
Look, man, this show finna change, y'all. Spoon fed long enough, now it's game on. Flame on, Johnny Storm with his napalm. Stay calm, yeah, strong, but it ain't on. Excuse me? But there's power in the question. You'll see that the power's in your essence. Confuse me? But I found it impressive. I constantly responded and found a reflection. Is also reflective. Now tell me what is info. Disregard, you don't know what your info. Start saying you a god playing limbo. That shit had you at odds with your kinfolk. You telling me it kicking God cause I'm in rote. Forgive me, but it's hard to compress all his knowledge of self and astonishing in post. To invoke, I'm a god that's within quotes. I've been dope and my conscience a big hope. Accuse me if you think that I'm wrong when I speak with my balls, but this is his show.